الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. من يهدي الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear sisters, my dear daughters. Welcome to a new series of lessons. Inshallah, we're going to start today the story and the life and the biography of our mothers, the mothers of the believers. When we say the mothers of the believers, we mean the wives of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, their characters and their virtue. And in this series, inshallah, we're going to take the every wife and her biography and her time spent with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. The references for this new series of lessons will be from Sirah, from the Sirah, of course, Sirah for Ibn Hisham, and from the Hadith Sahih by Al-Bukhari and Muslim, from the verse of the Quran, ayat the Quran, and also from the regarding the organization and the way of that we're going to follow in the events will take quotes and pieces from them book The Mothers of Believers for the writer Halima Dermisk, and she's Turkish, and she has a very beautiful book called The Mothers of Believers, where she wrote it in a very organized manner. And this is what we're going to take some pieces or a few pieces from this book in our presentation, in addition to the what came in the Sirah and what came in the Quran and the Sunnah, as we mentioned before. At the beginning, I would like to welcome all of you. And I would like to tell you that really I miss you so much, so much. I miss the lessons and I miss the lectures. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept your good deeds in Ramadan and in the Eid Mubarak for all of you, inshallah. And I think that Quran should be our priority in Ramadan and after Ramadan. We should continue, inshallah, on Ramadan. May Allah accept from all of us, inshallah. So we'll start now, ala barakatillah. Bismillah. Now, when we begin this new series about the mothers of the believers, we should have, as usual, to know the goals of learning about the mothers of the believers, as usually we are doing in every new series that we begin, that we should know why we should know, and what are our goals from learning about the wives of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. Number one, to know more about the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam as a husband and as a father and as a father-in-law and other social roles for the Prophet. My dear sisters and my dear daughters who attended with me before the Sirah and the biography of the Prophet, we were focusing, and the Sirah were focusing on the military and on the political and on the how Islam started and how it was spread and how the people at last entered the Islam in groups. All this was related to the military and social to the military and to political aspect. We didn't have a focus on the social life of the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, because we wanted to pass through the numerous events happened in Mecca and in Al-Madinah. When we are studying now the story and the biography of the mothers of the believers or his wives, alayhi salatu wassalam. So we are going to see through their eyes a window about the social life of the Prophet and how he was great at his home, great as a husband, and great in everything in his home, like he was great and perfect as a leader for the army and for the ummah. Number two, as we mentioned, to get an idea about the social life of the Prophet. Number three, to be near to be near to our mother's life and what they used to do in order to take them as a role model. We mentioned before that when we studied the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, one of the important goals of studying seerah at that at that time is to take the Prophet as a role model for us. It was not just teaching and saying stories. So the same thing will do in the with the wives of the Prophet, inshallah, to know how they behave, how they lived with the Prophet ﷺ, why they deserve to be taking the title of the mothers of the believers, and what will be their rewards. All this we're going to know it, inshallah, in this series. Number four, to know why they deserve to be the wives of the Prophet and what type of qualification made them eligible for such an honor. To study their biography and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewarded them in life and hereafter. So these are the 5 goals of studying the life or the biography of the mothers of the believers, to know about the Prophet's social life, to know about our mother's life, and to know why they qualified to have such an honor and what rewards being given to them from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now we'll have to say why they've been mentioned as or titled as mothers of believers. Actually, we are not the one who called them mothers of believers. The mothers of believers, the title being mentioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, in Surah Al-Ahzab, in ayah 6, Allah is mentioning the Prophet is closer to the believers than their own selves, and his wives are their mothers. So the ayah is very clear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the title of mothers of the believers to the wives of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And also I want to highlight shortly the first part of this ayah, which is mentioning that the Prophet is closer to the believers than their own selves, which means that we should love the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam more than ourselves. And actually, I remember, I wish to tell you and share with you a hadith, sahih, came that was a conversation happened between the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. So the Prophet mentioned to Umar that you will not be a true believer except if you love me more than yourself. So Umar radiallahu anhu mentioned to the Prophet, oh Rasulullah, I love you, but not more than myself. So the Prophet told him, no, Umar, you have to, in order to be a true believer, you have to love me more than yourselves. So Umar waited for minutes and then came back to the Prophet and told him, now, Ya Rasulullah, I love you more than myself. Well, to be honest with you, in the past when I was reading such hadith, I was always thinking, what happened? What happened to Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu made them change his mind, made him change his opinion and mention al-an, or now, Ya Rasulullah, I love you more than myself. Actually, by deep thinking, you will find that yourself is not all the time ordering you by good deeds. Sometimes you have whispering, bad whispering from yourselves, because the whispers is two types, the whispers coming from shaitan and the whispers coming from nafs or from souls or selves. So ourselves is not giving us the good advice. Who is giving us the good advice all the time, 100%, is the Prophet ﷺ. That's why we love our Prophet ﷺ more than ourselves. Now we'll go to Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, mothers of believers, Ummahat al-Mu'mineen Arabic, Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, or mothers of believers, the saint of our mothers. They are our mothers, our role models. They are our eyes to see how the Prophet ﷺ, as a loving and caring husband. They were blessed by his company ﷺ in his life, and they will in the hereafter. They acquired the honor of being reference for all Muslim women. They reached the most high place among Muslim women, as one of them, Sayyida Khadija radiallahu anha, is one of the best 4 women in the world. According to the hadith sahih by the Prophet, that the best 4 women in the world is Maryam ibn Imran, the mother of Prophet Isa, and Asiya bint Muzahim, which is who is the wife of Fir'aun Musa, and we have also the Lady Khadija, or Sayyida Khadija bint Khuwaylid, the first wife for the Prophet ﷺ, and the 4th is Fatima bint Muhammad, or the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, Fatima al-Zahra. So they are the best 4 women in the world. One of them was the first wife of the Prophet ﷺ, Sayyida Khadija. The mothers, or our mothers, they saw the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sallallahu alayhi wa sallam as a human being and as a prophet. They saw him while he was praying, while he was reading Quran, while he was laughing, while he was shedding tears when he is in grief, and implored his Lord in the night. They sensed the verses being revealed to the Prophet ﷺ when they were at home. They witnessed how he perspired and tired during these moments. They had, actually, this is very important to know, because no one could describe for us these details, these very details that happening at his home, alayhi salatu wasalam, to know what his life was, except his wives, the most near or the nearest persons to him. Also, our mothers, they had many co-wives, and who were all from different tribes, as we're going to know, and even from different nations and different features and ages. They all had to treat each other kindly and mercifully. They had, our mothers, they had to share their food, their knowledge, without sending anyone away empty-handed. And this is a common characters. When we are speaking now, we are speaking about the common characters of all our mothers. And then, inshallah, from the next episode, we're going to speak about our mother, Khadija bint Khuwaylid. But in this lesson, we're going to speak generally about the general characters and virtue of our mothers. Being the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, they embraced all believers indeed like mothers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Ahzab, ayah number 53, is saying, it's not proper for you to annoy the Prophet nor marry his wives after him. So it was prohibited that the wives of the Prophet after his death to be married by any of the believers. That's why they were considered as the mothers of the believers. They sheltered orphans. They reached out to the poor, the abandoned, and the needy. They educated the illiterate and fostered the children. They were steadfast in their salah and prayers. They abided their compulsory fasting, and they fasted voluntarily for a multitude of days. They gave away charity, and they give zakah in abundance. And this was also a common character in all of the wives of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam. They rendered their homes as a resting place for the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, and they enjoyed his kindness, his love, his mercy, his wisdom. They dared to stand close to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, even in the battlefield. When I don't know, maybe we didn't mention or mention, I'm not remembering in the seerah, when every battle the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam was having to go, he took one of his wives with him, or the most of the battles. That's why they take one of them with him. And they are all sharing him even in the war time and in the battle and critical time, fearing the possibility of his death or his injury. They were with him. He didn't leave them. He took them with him. As we mentioned, in every battle, he took one of his wives. They were beside the Prophet ﷺ in his last moments of life, wiping the sweat from his forehead, cooling his fever with water. Sayyida Aisha, of course, Lady Aisha, she was the one with him in his last minutes, and trying to soothe his pain while they shed tears. She was shedding tears, and of course all the wives at that time were very sad. They lived a life full of iman, faith, taqwa, piety, knowledge, virtue, and honor, grace, and they reached their Lord in this state. May Allah the Almighty be pleased with them. Now we'll come, after just mentioning a general view or overview about their virtue and their honor type of behavior they are doing. Now we're going to mention how they reached this level of honor, how they became the mothers of believers, how they had the honor of being the wives of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, how they have this appreciation from the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when I'm speaking about that all the time, you should remember that all of us is considered to be daughters and sons of our mothers. Since they are our mothers, so we are their children, the sons and daughters. And we mentioned to take them as a role model, to think about their behavior, to think how they reached this honor in order to do like them, or try to reach a very minute level like them. So we're going now to enumerate the points that made them reach this level, how they reached this level of honor. Number one, they turned their back on all worldly adornment for the sake of Allah and His Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. In Surah Al-Ahzab, from ayah 28 to 29, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning, O Prophet, say unto your wives, if you desire the world's life and its adornment, come. I will content you and will release you with a fair release. But if you desire Allah and His Messenger and the abode of the hereafter, then indeed Allah has prepared for the good among you an immense reward. Here, this ayat came after the actually the battle that the Muslim won in this battle of Banu Nadir, when they beated Banu Nadir, one of the Jewish tribe at that time in Medina, and they had actually they won a lot of spoils and booty at that time. And when we say the living was very simple, the way of living of the Prophet and his wives were very simple in their homes. So, يعني some of the wives of the Prophet asked him to increase the spendings on the home and on their houses, and since there is a lot of spoil being gained after this battle. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed these ayat on his Prophet to mention to them that those who want the adornment of this word, you can release her. Release her stands for divorce, to divorce her. And those who want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messenger should be patient on the hardship that they are having in their life with him for the sake of the message. We can say that the home of the wives, every one of the wife was having a room, only one room. And this room was a tiny room, each consisting of 4 clay walls. Their sustenance was sometimes only a piece of dry bread, sometimes a glass of milk, or a handful of dates. Now the question comes to us, why this hard life? Was the Prophet poor? This is my question. Was the Prophet poor? No, the Prophet was not poor at all. He can actually, especially after the battles that the Muslim won and a lot of spoils, as we mentioned, there was usually 1/5, if you remember that 1/5 of the booty or the spoils being distributed to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So sometimes he had a lot of money, a lot of camels, a lot of cows, but he just donate all of them or most of them for charity, for sadaqah, for the people in need, for the poor people. So this type of life actually was not because of the poorness or because of that he couldn't have the Prophet to spend. No, he could spend. And if he wants to spend more, he can spend more and more. And according to the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentioned to his messenger that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if the messenger wished that, he will make him live in a palace, not in a normal or in a simple house. But the Prophet all the time, he chose to be a humbled slave for Allah and servant for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best choice and the best thing he chose. And he wanted his wives also to have this choice. Why to have this choice? To be a role model. Again, the password that we are starting and we're going with this word all through this series of lessons. Role model for all the wives and for all the daughters, and how it's important to have something more than money. Money is not everything. Sometimes a lot of money, a lot of wealth will be the cause of grief and the cause of sadness. So this is from the lessons that the Prophet ﷺ, his life was very simple, but at the same time, it was very happy and being loved by his wives, and he loved his wives, all of them, which was the most important in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another point that made our mothers reach this level of honor. They were aware of the fact that the reward or punishment they would receive in the hereafter would be doubled. The reward and the punishment for them, our mothers, will be doubled because of their position. And this is also came in Surah Al-Ahzab in Ayah 30 and Ayah 31. Allah is mentioning, O wives of the Prophet, whoever of you commits an open indecency, the punishment shall be increased to her doubly. And this is easy to Allah. And whoever of you is obedient to Allah and His Messenger and does good, we will give to her her reward doubly, and we have prepared for her an honorable sustenance. So this ayat is making them all the time, the mothers of the believers, to be full of integrity and righteousness. Righteousness. They are always fear of doubling the punishment, which is something they couldn't and they will not bear or be simple for them. So this is also from the things that made them reach this honor, that being titled as mothers of the believers is making you to be more accountable than other women and other believers. So that's why they were full of integrity, our mothers, radiallahu anhum. Another point that made our mothers reach this level of honor, in order to preserve themselves as well as preserving the ones they spoke to. They spoke to their male guests from behind the curtain. We know, of course, that those who went for Al-Masjid Al-Nabawi, or the Messenger Mosque in Al-Madinah Al-Munawwara, the place where the grave of the Prophet ﷺ was his room, Aisha room, the room of Aisha, and then the following part is related to the other area related to other wives. As we mentioned, every one of them has her own room. So, of course, the Prophet as a leader, and people may come to ask him about something, or they want something. So they will knock the door and will try to speak to him. Sometimes he's not here. So who will going to answer? One of their wives, one of his wives. So one of his wives, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned how this process will take place, how it will take place. In Surah Al-Ahzab, ayah 53. And when you ask of them, this is the order came to the believers, the men, when you ask of them, which means when you ask the wives of the Prophet, anything, ask it of them from behind the curtain. Min wara'i hijab. That is purer for your hearts and for their hearts, which means that prohibition of the direct eye contact. From this ayah, we can know that when a woman speaks to a strange man to her, she should avoid direct eye contact. This is very important. And this is happened by our mothers, and we should follow our mothers in such thing, that they used to have a curtain. And even the Sayyida Aisha radiallahu anha, when we're going to her biography, we'll find that she was faqiha, and she was a scholar, especially after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. She had fiqh lessons, and her students were from the men, from the believers. So there was like a curtain between her and between the students sitting and listening to her. Okay, so there must be no direct eye contact between the Muslim woman and any strange man, whatever this man is, Muslim or not Muslim. They shouldn't, and this came actually in other ayat in Surah An-Nur, for a generalized order for all the female Muslims to send down their sight away from during speaking to other men, or try to not make a direct eye contact with them. Number 3. They had been ordered by Allah to remain in their homes. Surah Al-Ahzab, ayah, or also ayah number 33. in Surah Al-Ahzab. We'll find that now all the ayat I'm speaking about in Surah Al-Ahzab. Surah Al-Ahzab, many of the orders being revealed and sent down to the mothers of believers in Surah Al-Ahzab. And abide in your houses. Don't display yourselves as a display of the former times of ignorance. Establish prayer and give zakah and obey Allah and His Messenger. Allah intends only to remove from you the impurity of sin, O people of the Prophet's household, and to purify you with extensive purification. Here, the order came to them by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to stay at home. What does it mean, stay at home? Stay at home means that you are not allowed to go out for purposeless things. Just going out for going out. It's not allowed for them. And why? Because actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning, is calling them, O people of Prophet's household, which means Ahl al-Bayt, Ahl al-Bayt. Household, which bayt, which house? The house of the Prophet. So the owner of them is coming by referring them to the Prophet, the house of the Prophet, the household of the Prophet. And by mentioning to keep them at home as much as they can, this is a type of purification from sins, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants them to be always pure, to be away from sins. What does it mean? Now I will give you a very simple example. If you have a diamond ring, if you have a diamond ring in your house, where you will put this diamond? Of course, the diamond ring will not be in the kitchen or in the bathroom. It will be in a very clean cover and in a very beautiful box. And the box will be in a purse and or in a bag, and the bag will be in the wardrobe, and you close the wardrobe and you know the place, and there is a specific time you are taking this and ring. You are very careful about not any injury or any break or any falling happen to this ring, because it's a diamond, it's expensive. So you can imagine how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is treating the or is mentioning to the wives of the Prophet, they are more precious, of course, than diamond, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to keep them pure, away from any sins, away from just going outside from for anything that there is no need for that. If you're going to apply that in our lives, the purposeless shopping, the purposeless wandering, the purposeless just you don't know what to do in your home, to take your car and just go out, all this with something that you are not in need of. We are in need of when you go to your work. This is the way that you earn your money. Yes, you can go. You can go for buying the essential things. Yes, you can go. You can go for a picnic, maybe, yes, you can, but it will be with limited, not all the time out. This is very important for us as daughters and as a woman. And this is the way to behave as mothers, and also to raise our daughters, that not all the time to go out, because she's a precious, and she is not allowed to all the time to go out purposeless, with a purposeless goal. If there is something important, if something add to her life, is something, for example, courses, if for education, is for work, yes, of course she can go with the things that we mentioned and we're going to mention in our way in this journey. How to deal with others, how to deal with strange men, how to speak to them, how will be a limitation. All these things will be carried out. But here, when we are speaking about specific ayah, that Allah is ordering the Prophet's wives to stay in order to purify them with, as mentioned in this ayah very clearly, extensive purification. Another important thing they did to make them reach the level of honor of being the mothers of believers, that they been prohibited from softness of speech or in speech when talking to men. Again, we're coming to the strange men, even if they are believers. Allah in Surah Al-Ahzab, ayah number 32. O wives of the Prophet, you are not like any other woman. If you keep your duty to Allah, then be not soft in speech, lest he in whose heart is a disease should be moved with desire, but speak in an honorable manner. So here the order is coming to them and to us. When you are speaking to a strange man, you are not allowed to soften, to make your speech softening, or to laugh in a way that's unaccepted, or in a high-pitched way, or in a way that make the man in front of you, if he's not a good man, to have a bad desires, start to move towards you. And when we are taking such instructions, we should believe it 100%. Please, you have to believe it 100% because it's coming from our Creator. When you are speaking about the ayat of the Quran, you do not argue with it. You do not say, no, now there is a modern men, they are not they having these desires in their heart, they are more business-minded. No. The Creator is telling you so you have to follow your Creator in His words, which come in Quran. When He's telling you, don't soften your speech and don't speak in a way of giving an expression of weakness and softness in front of the man in front of you, even if this man is Muslim or a believer or the best bitir or righteous man in the world, you should, or the imam of the masjid, you are not allowed to do that. Because at last he is a man created by his Creator. And the Creator created the man and created you, is telling you don't speak to him in such manner. Because if he's not good man, something will happen in his heart towards you. Okay, so this is very important. The order came for our mothers and also for us. Another point, they have been ordained to recite Quran and learn Sunnah of the Prophet. In ayah number 34 of the same surah, and remember what recited in your houses of the verses of Allah and wisdom. And wisdom, the scholars mention it is Sunnah. Wisdom here stands for Sunnah. Indeed, Allah is ever subtle and acquainted with all things. So it is another order that we should recite Quran and we should recite the hadith or the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ in our house, in order that the blessing will come in our house and come on all our sayings. They have been ordained to wear hijab. This is another order that they obeyed. Allah in the same surah, ayah 59. O Prophet, tell your wives and your daughters and the women of the believers. Here the ayah is very clear. It's coming for the wives, for the daughters, for the women of the believers, to bring down over themselves of their outer garments. That's more suitable, that they will be known and not be abused. And ever is Allah forgiving and merciful. So here, of course, there is another ayah in Surah An-Nur that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning وَلْيَضْرِبْنَ بِخُمُرِهِنْ, which means to cover the بالخمر, or coming from al-khimar is the head cover. So خُمُرِهِنْ يَضْرِبْنَ means to cover their head, and their جُوبِهِنْ is the upper chest. The neck and the upper chest part is all to be covered by a cover. This is the khimar. The khimar that means the head covering together with the neck and the upper chest. So the two ayahs here, the ayah and the other one in Surah An-Nur is very clear about hijab. Hijab is being cleared, ordained by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, and there is a hadith in the Sunnah or يعني instructing and ordering the Muslims, girls and women to wear hijab. Now I would like to just highlight in a few seconds about the word that is more suitable that they will be known. They will be known that أدنى أن يعرفن فلا يؤذين and not be abused. What type of يؤذين? What does it mean? And what does it mean known? Will be known. And what does it mean not be abused? So, can you answer me, please? Can you send me on the chat room the answer? What does it mean will be known? And what does it mean will not be abused? Anyone can tell me? Just let you wake up. Maybe I'm afraid that you are slept from me. Who knows the answer? Yes, there is a coming answer from Junaiba. Junaiba, alaykum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Known as Muslim, Bahija. Yes, known as Muslim, but what does it mean to be a Muslim wearing hijab? Who can tell me? What does it mean? What does it mean being a Muslim lady wearing hijab to the others? What does it mean? Sarah, hijab is protection. Sarah will be known as Muslim. They won't be hurt by men. Yes. And this means that usually the hurt or the abuse came to the exposure. With more exposing, with more having the attack. This is number one. Excellent. Yes, Daria, to avoid desire, sexual desire from man, yes, because you will cover yourself. So this is a way that you will not be abused. Hijab is a sign of modesty and form protection. Yes, excellent. Yeah, yes, and Hala. Another important thing that when you are wearing your hijab and known as a Muslim lady, that make the man speaking to you will have the barrier, the hijab. Remember, وأن تكلموهم من وراء حجاب. يعني إيه حجاب؟ يعني barrier. Hijab is barrier, which means a barrier that used to be used by the curtain used by yes, that you are right, respect from man, of course. By the mothers of the believers. Now you are putting this curtain by your hijab, by making a barrier between you and the man who will talk to you. This is number one. The way of your talking will depend on the respect, because unfortunately, few of those who are wearing hijab may speak in a way that with softness, as we mentioned. So the softness shouldn't be, it is prohibited, as we mentioned, and at the same time, you speak in a good manner, in an honorable manner. And the other thing that wearing hijab will make the conversation between you and any man based on mind level. This is important. This is very important. Conversation between you and any man while you are wearing your hijab and speaking in an honorable way to him will make the conversation between you and him will be based on mind level. He will not have any space for any other desire or any other feeling that may happen if you are not wearing your hijab and if you are not dressing in a modest way. Okay? So, the mothers of believers, our mothers, they obeyed Allah and his messenger in all they ordered to do. So they deserved to be the mothers of believers. And when we are speaking about that they are our mothers, there is a very famous statement mentioned, like daughter, like mother. So, or like mother, like daughter. So, which means that since they are our mothers, we should follow them. They considered our role model. And since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he honored them because of their modesty, because of their obeying his orders. Allah, inshallah, will honor us if we follow the same thing and will follow his orders and follow his what came in the Sunnah and what came in the Quran. Now we came to the end of our presentation today, and inshallah next time we'll have our first mother, Sayyida Khadija bint Khuwaylid. Sayyida Khadija bint Khuwaylid, the first wife of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. A lot of beautiful and love story and many romantic things we're going to mention in the story of love and marriage of Sayyida Khadija radiallahu anha with our Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. Inshallah, next time we're going to speak about that. سبحانك الله بحمدك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.